nothing mattered aside from the fact that there's another human being that's like you and they're your friend.
Yeah.
And so that friendships obviously evolve as we get older and we become more complex and complicated beings. We strive to like, you know, form our identities and form our opinions and stuff. And so the inevitability is that there's going to be a clash of some sort. And so my question is, how do we find a common ground for friendships in adulthood, given our evolving nature, especially now where, because of the internet, we are like filled with all sorts of identities and opinions and cultures constantly shifting. And so I feel like even now in our like adult age, within 10 years, we might not even have the same friends.
Yeah.
Based on how we're constantly evolving and shifting our opinions, and things are very polarizing. And, you know, so I kind of wonder, like, on one hand, seek out people that are similar to you, but at the other hand, like, you know, maybe those people who you share similarities with may not have those same similarities 10 years down the line.
Yeah.
So find the common ground to kind of maintain and retain friendships.
That's such a
I
good
have this sorry. I find it really interesting that everyone keeps going back to like when you're a kid you just like make friends with whoever's in the playground and that. And I feel like even in high school, like I had these like really deep friendships, but it was just based on the fact that like the four of us would sit together at lunch and that kind of thing. And it was very like practical first. And I feel like the older you get, the more complex you get, the more you think about your identity and how you interact with the world, the more you try and like quantify your friendships and things. And like as you get to know people, it's like, well, how often are we texting? How often are we seeing each other? How often are we agreeing and disagreeing? And you're trying to like balance all these frequencies to measure your friendships with different people. And so there's like an element of like, well, I'm trying to befriend this person because currently this is the person that I can like text the most frequently and that kind of thing. And it's kind of like you're planning for your friendships in 10 years, because I think every adult has the fear that you can't make friends as an adult. So everyone's like trying to grasp onto the friendships that they're making at the moment. And so it's like, how can you plan for like, you know, growing together or growing apart in 10 years, but also trying to balance this like this shift from friendship being this like practical easy thing that just happens to like this thing that you're very, very consciously putting like thought and effort into and like critically analyzing like every tiny moment of the interaction, because that's like what adults do.
Yeah. I also think about like how friendships change through generations. Like when I look at my mom, who is 61 now, she's had the same group of friends since she was like in her 20s.
My mom too.
Before that, yeah. And I'm like, I wonder if that's possible for our generation, given the rate at which we change. When I look at like my mom's generation, they're not bombarded with the amount of info. When I look at my mom's generation, they're not bombarded with the amount of content and information that we are. And it's that constant intaking of content and information that causes us to grow at such a rapid speed that no other generation before us has experienced. And so like similar to the question that Ruth was asking, given the rate at which we grow like as a generation, is it sustainable to expect that we can have lifelong friendships? Or is that really just a lifelong friendships determined by the rate at which you and your friend circle stay stagnant? Not stagnant doesn't necessarily mean it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's, yeah, if you kind of just watch the same shows and hang out with the same people and you're in the same spaces all the time, you're not really gonna mentally and psychologically change that much. But our generation just doesn't have that luxury. We're like bombarded with new information every 10 minutes.
And we're constantly dissatisfied.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like we just, we're the most dissatisfied. I mean, I think Gen Z will be more dissatisfied, but wow, we're just so dissatisfied. Which I think
we're
is like, Which I think is the crux of the human condition. Like, I think the foundation of humanity is dissatisfaction. Like, that's like the premise from which humans were born. But then I think like the internet just took it to another level. Like now it's wild. Yeah.
Cool.
When it comes to, I think, evolving friendships and stuff, like when I was a child, I was bullied from like the very first day until I was maybe like 16 or 17. So I find that I didn't really have any friends until I was maybe 13 years of age.
Oh wow.
And even then, none of them were friends. Like my therapist would be like, "They're not your friends." I'm like, "Okay, let me have one thing." But I
Wait,
find that,
not friends? Why does she feel that
oh,
way?
like what did I say to her recently? I was like, oh, something like, oh, they didn't stand up for me or something, blah blah blah, and they had like that power within, you know, they were popular kids. Like I was friends with popular kids, but like none of them ever like defended me. And she would say, you know, that's not really your friend. Those people are not really your friend in that moment. But that same girl that I would say now, she's a good friend, but a different kind of friend than I would pick now. You know, we wouldn't be friends if we didn't go to school together. But I still value her as highly value her as a friend. But the way I kind of have negotiated friendships, because actually when I was in counseling, my counselor said to me, all your friends seem to be people who you work with. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, that's not normal. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, and so became apparent that I had no friends. This was at 27 years of age. So I know, and I was just like, oh, I've just been hanging out with like people at work, and so my friend group would change whenever I was in a different group. But how I kind of deal with friendships now, it's kind of in a kind of a detached way, but also I have these regular friends as well who will turn out to be friends for life, but kind of like a gravitational pull. Like, this person is my friend for this amount of time, for this moment, and we may not be friends in a year's time or 2 years time, but at the moment we are. And that's kind of well, that's how I regarded it, I suppose. And that was the need in me. We both took what we needed from each other, being attracted to each other in that moment. And then, so I have like become friends and also let go of a lot of friends throughout my life. And the ones who are my true friends have stuck, you know. And it's not until my later 20s that I actually developed friends, really, I would say. So yeah, like I think it is kind of that pull. You will just have a friend for, like, sometimes you'll have friends for art, or old friends, or, you know, you might have that person who you don't agree with in a lot of things. But I think for me, for instance, I have a friend who's gotten into conspiracy theories and QAnon and stuff like that, and it's derangement, you know what I mean? But it's,
Oh my God.
and we're not in contact, but I will hold that space for her to come back if she wants to come back. I'm not going to say, you know, because that's not helpful either. But she's just like, oh my God, anti-mask, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, okay, I'm here when you're ready to come back, but I'm not going to engage with you right now. But having that kind of non-judgment towards those people, because they're in that position for a reason, you know, like there are conditions that lead up to someone being in that kind of forensic, panicked, paranoid state, that they think that, you know, masks are them losing their liberty, not the
No.
So
you know, hundreds of years of subjugation.
I have a question. So how can you have friendships with people if there are conflicting beliefs? And what kind of a friendship could you have with a person if there are conflicting
I think
beliefs?
it's about like compartmentalizing like friendships sometimes. Like work friendships and like, you know, old friends versus like people that you're really close to, and kind of like putting different people in different spaces, maybe like that could be like a way where you kind of what Christina was saying, where you're like gravitating around people for only like certain reasons during certain moments, and kind of like, well, this person's ideas about this are not on my level, but we're work friends, and like I just want to like have to work with someone that I hate all the time, you know?
Yeah, I think one
Yeah, and
realization.
you're not completely open and yourself, and you know, the most intimate, like it's all about intimacy, which is usually to do with boundaries. You know, I'm not going to be friends with someone who's X, Y, and Z in that intimate space. That is not like, I need to trust that someone is not being judgmental to me. And so if you're judgmental mental about X, Y, and Z, then turns out that, you know, you kind of assess people, don't you, for their openness, and if you are going to vibe on the same level. And when you find someone that you vibe on the same level, you can allow yourself to kind of be a little bit more boundaryless with them. But with different people, you might be like, okay, well, this is the boundary here, and it's intimacy, you know, it's like, this is the level of intimacy I've assigned for you, this is the amount of trust I give to you. And then
levels of intimacy.
I mean, one big realization for me was like, as somebody who's always a people pleaser and trying to be accepted by others and
Oh
fearing.
my God, me.
Is,
How are
like,
you working on that? Can we?
I mean, here's one way. Like, I had to reframe friendships as like, instead of me trying to be accepted, it's like them filling needs for me. And like,
Oh my, wow.
you have to
like,
think about it from like a more of
the
a
same
self-centered, even if it's not natural to be like self-centered in that way, to think about it like, okay, like it's not about like I can count this number of friends, I have these deep friendships, like it's not an ego thing. If your needs are being filled, it doesn't matter how many friendships you have. Or like, let's say you have one person that you can go to concerts with, that's great. Like you don't have to be their they don't have to be your best friend.
Yeah,
you don't have to have best friends if you don't need them. If you do need them, you can find them. And like, I mean, like for me, I guess I like followed the traditional, like my university friends are like the closest, you know, and like those have stuck even if we're not in the same city. But in terms of like people in your neighborhood, like I try to now think of like, do I have somebody to talk to about like my work stuff? Do I have somebody to like go to events with if I need to? And then like leave it there. Don't try to like force yourself to like feel bad about yourself because you don't have people that fill all your needs at once.
Yeah,
you have to accept other people as they are as well, and what, you know, how much they can offer as a person, rather than trying to fit everyone into your square hole, you know, like not everyone cannot be, one person cannot be everything for you. And that's actually something that I was struggling with. Definitely, I was like, well, this person isn't very good at this, blah blah blah, and then kind of being a bit more like radical about it. But when you come to accept like that, you are your biggest friend, really, you know, you are your best friend. And I actually think the whole concept of best friends is kind of, I don't know, it's like the chick flick romance man of friendships. Like I don't understand the best friend thing. Do people still have like their best friend?
When you were speaking earlier, Bobo, it was making me think about, I don't know if you're like this, but I'm definitely like this, and I feel like maybe you could be from what you were saying. But like I expect, like my friendships are always like incredibly intimate and like very intense. And so I find it difficult to have like very superficial relationships because I expect them to be like on very similar levels to like relationships. Which is, and I find relationships much easier than friendships. Like I don't, even now, like the idea of meeting new people, I'm like, how do I meet new people and like not like
I need to go from
or not have it be like, I always go there and I always think about it. I'm always like, is that just a me thing? And is it a problem or is it fine?
No,
like, does it matter or no?
I relate to that so much. I feel like I struggle to have relationships that are just casual. Like I because then I'm like, why? Like why? Why can't we just
so
like
weird
about death and spiral? Like
how's the weather?
I do.
Yeah.
But it's so weird because I can have like romantic relationships or sexual relationships that are quite casual and it doesn't bother me. But like friendships, I just like when they're really superficial, it's just I can't I need to like have some I need to connect with people like deeply. But
Same.
then it makes me think about like everything that we're saying with the like also the relationship to like I assume like most of us are, if not living in a city, like have sort of more of like a city mentality or like a city relationship in terms of like the people around us. Because I think of like my like old town in Italy where it's like there's 2,000 people and you don't have a choice like who you're friends with. Your
Yeah.
friend group is predetermined by like everyone that you're born at the same time as, and then
Yeah.
you're
My
all
biggest
friends
fear.
for life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so different from because they all hated each other. Every year there was something, they all hated each other, and they also all like were completely inseparable because
Yeah.
like they're the only
Communal
friends. Yeah, exactly. And I think like it's interesting like how you were saying about like the internet and like our generation, and I think it's also something to do with globalization as well, and the lack of we no longer have our like core social structures in
Yeah.
place. We move around a lot. The social structures are much bigger, they're larger, they're more complex, and so like maintaining friendships, particularly maintaining them, I think, over like making them is quite difficult in this climate.
It's
Yeah.
funny that you're saying that though, because I'm the exact opposite when it comes to friendships and relationships. I have such a hard time figuring out how to meet someone or how to navigate dating someone new. But meeting new people and making friends with them just is natural to me. Like it just happens.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
And I have no idea why, but I just like I've been single for 6 years, I think, and like I've dated people, but just never gets serious because I'm like, nah, I'm not really feeling it. I'm leaving. Bye. But
Yeah.
with friends, it just happens. Like I just get a deep connection with them so much easier.
You're a
Wow,
unicorn.
that's so interesting.
I just
I'm like you as well, I think. Except I'm the opposite when it comes to boys. I'm like, please don't leave me. Please. I love you, even though you're a terrible person. Please stay.
That's
That's
conditioning.
literally all of us.
I would
think-
just love to get sorry.
No, it's cool. So I'm gonna say this real quick. So I think for me, when it comes to friendships, I'm the type of person where I can make friends easily in the sense that the initial interactions are very like bubbly and the conversation can flow, but literally within maybe a month, it kind of just
Fizzles
fades
out.
away. And sometimes I think it's because I personally feel overwhelmed by like being online or just existence. And so it's just like
Girl.
texting people back, you know, just the maintenance that friendship requires. Sometimes it feels
Oh my god,
a bit
me.
like, and it's
Me.
not as if I want to be those friends, but I sometimes feel like maybe it's because I'm being pulled and exhausted through other channels. It makes it hard for me to kind of keep the friendship stuff as consistent. And so oftentimes I may start off in college with like 20 friends and it's down to one because I just sometimes I can't.
But I feel like relationships, like romantic relationships, require so much more effort on like the maintenance part. Like they
Really?
almost
I think
require
women
you
do
to
that.
like every moment you're awake, you need to be on them. I'm like, no, my friends are gonna text once a week and we're still gonna be really, really close and still gonna have
Yeah.
the same intimacy. But with relationships, especially with men, they just expect you to spend all your energy and all your brain craft on them every second you're awake. And I'm like, no, I cannot be bothered to do that.
That's
I
so
think my
interesting.
issue, I think my issue with that is like with like romantic relationships, because it's just like expected that you're there all the time or whatever. It's like, all right, easy, because I'm always expected to be on. I can be on whenever I feel like, and then it's whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas with friendships, I feel like because you're not expected to always be there or whatever, like it's meant to be like an in and out thing more often than like when I go to reach out to people, I'm like overburdened by the anxiety of like, oh, but what if they don't actually want me to be reaching out to them right in this moment or for this purpose or whatever. But like those fears dissolve with a romantic relationship. So I feel like for me, that's the difference in ease between like friendships and romantic relationships, is
Yeah.
that like you don't
Treat our
think about
friendships more like romantic relationships.
What was
what was
that?
that, sorry?
Treat our friendships more like romantic relationships in terms of like the intimacy level. You know,
I
I mean,
want
you don't
that.
have friends, but I'm just
See, what I was gonna ask is that like, is the only difference between a friendship and a romantic relationship, is it just the level of intimacy? Like, is that blurry line that separates them? Because like I find when like I've asked others, like the most common answer is they just say something like sex or intimacy, and then but like once they think a bit deeper about it, they actually get a bit stumped as to what separates the two. And so I was just really curious on what like everyone else's thoughts on kind of
Ah,
what
I
is
love
the
this
difference.
question. For me, it is intimacy, but not on a physical level. Well, like, yeah, physically, but it extends. I think when you're dating someone, you now share a life. So there's a layer of vulnerability, but also like care. Like, I feel like, I think something that's also really destroyed, or that's made friendship really hard for me, is just like mental health. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's hard to expect a friend to like be there for you, or even like understand when you're depressed, or like hold space, because it feels like it's emotional. I really hate that phrase, emotional labor, but it feels like it's emotional labor when a friend has to do it, whereas like I feel it's more I feel like your well-being is your partner's well-being, and vice versa when you're in a romantic relationship, whereas there's like a clear line of demarcation when it comes to friendships, where it's kind of like, or maybe it's because I've literally had a friend be like, I honestly don't want any sad friends, like honestly no bad vibes, like none of that, which like
Oh my
already
God.
drew such a line
no.
for me, like
That's
it,
not a friend.
Oh no.
I don't know, but like she was just like, these are just my boundaries. And
Right.
this was someone I considered like really a really, really close friend. I feel like it took our friendship from like 20 to 5. Just
Oh,
because
that, but
like,
her love for you was very conditional then.
yeah, but then there's that argument of like, oh, but all love is conditional. And then I
Yeah.
grapple with that. And I'm like, I don't think all love is conditional. But I do think that there's layers of love that get more and more conditional. I don't really
Agreed.
like, yeah, and I think maybe this is me, the people pleaser, coming out. I don't really mind, like, I don't know, I've had friends with mental health. It's not that deep. It's not that like burdensome for me. So I don't actually mind. Like, it doesn't require much for me to be friends with someone who like has bipolar or is depressed or whatever. That I also like, I can't expect the same for someone else, especially if they're not benefiting from that. I don't know, it's really complicated.
I think
Can I
that
ask you a question, Bobo?
Yeah.
I think that in romantic relationships, it's like that each person is willing to bear burdens of discomfort, because even if you're uncomfortable, at the end of the day, you each will still work towards fulfilling one another's needs and desires. And
Yeah.
sometimes, but with friendships, we don't add enough of that with friendships. It's more like, we interact based on like what we like, what type of fun engagements we want to have, or conversations. But sometimes I don't think that within friendships we have that aspect of romantic relationships where we're willing to kind of share and carry each other's burdens for the long run, or for the sake of whatever the ultimate goal of friendships should be, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I have an interesting take here, because I realized last year that these kind of, I had these fling friendships, as I said, which actually turned out to be kind of codependent, romantic relationships without sex. And
Explain.
like one way I'm categorizing them. So like, for instance, a perfect example, I mean, I have two good examples, but perfect example, I met this guy Patrick on Tinder, and we started seeing each other, and then we decided we're just going to be friends. He was just out of a 9-year relationship, I was in the midst of my, I don't know what to call it, but in bad place. And the two of us were going, sorry? Oh, sorry. I thought I heard someone say something. The two of us were going to the cinema together. We were going for walks like 2-3 nights a week. We were watching movies in my house. We were staying over in each other's houses. Like, it was very, very, very intimate, and it was like a codependent friendship that was so, it was so very intimate. And another example is my friend, she broke up with her girlfriend, and she stayed in my bed for 5 weeks. And then she ended up living with me, and the two of us just had this really intense friendship that, you know, was just a kind of like helping each other along. You know, she'll do it for me at some point, and I was just kind of like carrying her along, and she was helping me. So I've had these quite intense, like, and now we are still friends. This is, yeah, good story. But yeah, this kind of like codependent like friendship that has been super intimate, but probably my own fear of like intimacy and getting involved with anyone. That's how I couldn't get involved with a friendship.
When you say codependent, like in the negative sense or in the acceptable sense? Like, was it an acceptable kind of codependency, or more like problematic, toxic, that sort of stuff?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I wouldn't have characterized it as toxic, even though there was toxic elements. Like that guy, for instance, I would have been like, we were interested in each other in the beginning, and then the boundary. It was weird because when he was a guy and we were both heterosexual, it was strange because the line was so blurred. There was no clear line in that friendship of boyfriend girlfriend, and he had a conversation with me, you know, like, I don't want to lead you on, or blah, blah, blah. And I said, for some reason, me and you are here together, and we are who we are for each other right at this moment. And in 5 months' time, you could have a girlfriend, or I could have a boyfriend, or I'll be gone, or you'll be gone. And we won't ever have this friendship again because it won't have the same dynamic. So let's just enjoy each other and do what we're doing, like weird couple shit, like, okay, but without sex. Like, I don't know what we were doing, but it was what we needed for each other at the time. And I would characterize it as codependent because it was just that dynamic. But I wouldn't say like, no, it wasn't toxic. It was very, very, very helpful and needed.
I also feel like we need to stop thinking about human relationships as if they have to be forever or for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Because no one can have one life partner for the whole life with it being healthy the whole time, because people grow and evolve in their own direction. And like, what is the chances of finding someone else who's going to evolve in that exact same direction? Like, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So I feel like we need to normalize friendships being temporary.
Yeah.
They're never going to be forever.
Well, it's kind of funny because when I was growing up, you know, I grew up in a really rural area, and like everyone's white, and you know, everyone's super conservative, and I sort of gravitated towards finding like 3 really good friends like when I was younger, and I'm actually still really good friends with all 3 of those people, and we've weirdly, like, even though we haven't lived in the same cities and stuff, like we've grown at like the same rate where we actually can like still come together. And that friendship, like, we've grown at the same ways. We have like similar ideas about life still, and it's like very interesting. And I think it's actually hindered me from like making new friends because I have this expectation of like people that are just like going to grow with me throughout life and like in the same way that I am, which is like doesn't happen very often.
I feel like there's something there about like what I was saying before about like how you were just saying about rural versus like city and that whole like idea. I feel like that fits in well with what you were saying. Seal, is it? Yeah. Okay. Because like before you were stuck to like you again, your range was lessened, right? So you have like a certain amount of people that I say before. Which is like, when, but before. You know, and you couldn't. And so like I feel like, you know, and the structures of monogamy, which we now like present onto friendship as well, there were practical reasons for them. It wasn't an emotional reason towards like, I want the same person my whole life.
Right.
They're practical, right? So like you got married for practical reasons, not for romance. And that was a structure that then provided you financial security, family, housing. And your friends was the same thing. You had structure with your friendships. If you maintained the same friendships, you were like, okay. Or you had, you know, support. You had people you could rely on in your community. You had someone to talk to during the day when you were like by yourself, or, you know, you had someone to like help you out with your children or whatever it was, but they're like practical reasons. But when those practical reasons for long-term relationships, whatever they may be, don't serve us anymore, then yeah, I think you get into a state where it's like, okay, well, are my friendships or relationships allowed to constantly fluctuate? So I'm polyamorous, and within like a lot of polyam theory or like thought spaces, the line between like friendships versus like romantic or sexual relationships is often like quite blurred. And so like a lot of people will consider like a really good friend or even like an outer friend as part of their like polycule, which would be like their circle of like relationships. And like I find that I always drift towards that as well. Like I had like what you were saying, Bobo, about like a really good friend, you had a fallout. I had my best friendship ever, I'm like, I don't think a friendship will ever be on that same level.
Yeah.
We had like the biggest fallout, but we were also like, it was like also kind of romantic, but not really. Like I didn't like, it wasn't the same as a romantic relationship, but it had that same like level. So I feel like when you have in friendships, you don't have this expectation of kind of like what you guys were spoke about on the podcast about like sacrifice versus like the word is skipping my mind.
Compromise?
Yeah, compromise. I feel like in friendships often we don't like compromise, but in relationships, for whatever reason, the structure of it makes us feel like we have to accept people more at where they're at, or we have to like, or you know, if we have a fight with someone, we're more likely to be like, oh, like, well, maybe they're just hungry, or maybe they didn't sleep well enough, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, we're more likely to give leeway to relationships or to like partners than we are to friends. That level of like how much I do for you, I feel like is lessened.
I think for me, like all this talk about like codependence and like sacrifice and compromise and like the burdens that your emotions have on your friends makes me like ask the question that what should be the main purpose of friendships and what should be the main purpose of romance? Like, is it practical so that you have someone to talk to or go places with? Is it to fulfill your emotional needs? Like, what is the main thing that it should serve? Because I think that makes a lot of difference in all of these other points that we're talking about.
Isn't it all this companionship and just, I think that's all, honestly, when it comes to friendships, I don't think I expect anything more, which also ruins my friendships. I was talking about like support on my Instagram stories, like what levels of support do we expect from our friendships? And I was reading everyone's responses and I was like, wow, I must be kind of a psychopath. I don't really, because I don't expect, like if a friend is supportive, that's really nice. Like I love that. But if a friend isn't supportive, I don't think I'm really even like pressed. Like I think I'm not, obviously if they're tearing me down, like that's a whole other problem. But if a friend is indifferent to like what I'm doing with my life, I don't think that's something I need much. But I think because I don't need much from friendships other than companionship, I'm a bad friend because I don't offer much more than companionship unless you ask. Like unless
I
feel like it's so
yeah, like
individual
because
to-
I just assume everyone is also like me. And then on top of that, I have the fear, like there's just a voice in the back of my head that's like, oh, everyone hates you. Like just being a people pleaser is like the fear of not being accepted ever, which creates a lot of like limits and boundaries. So I tend to not offer what I'm asked for. But if anyone like asks for anything, I'm generally like I'm down. But I also just assume that people don't need much too, which is, yeah, it's a strange. So that's for me, like all I need from friendship is companionship. But then I think from just companionship and good ass conversations. But then
But
I think from,
did
like
that come
romance.
naturally, or did that? Because I'm the exact same way, but it's not just like, oh, one day like that's not how
No,
I
it's
am
definitely not
naturally.
natural. No.
Yeah, it's because
I
I've
think
been
trauma.
disappointed so many times.
Yeah.
It's the only
Yeah.
way that you can cope with it. You're just like, you know what? I'm gonna just expect nothing, because it's just so much easier. But I'm gonna give everything because I know how good,
Yeah.
how much you want that, and how good
Yeah.
that feels. But I just can't, because I can't just keep getting disappointed. It hurts, and it's
Oh my
like your
God,
ego's just
yes.
like getting
And I
like
feel
shut
like
down all the time. So you're just like, you know what? You do you.
Yeah,
I'm just
and I'll be
grateful for
good.
your presence and your companionship, just
Yeah.
existence.
is there like, you know, all of us like sort of expect and need like different things, and maybe that's part of the complexity of it, is like all different people need different things out of friendship and want different things out of friendship and come to relationships in different ways. So you're having to figure out what people want at the same time as figuring out if you're compatible on the things that you want, which could be different. Like I'm similar, like I don't need a lot, and I think but I think as a result, like I've found like low maintenance people, and like, so I could never be friends with somebody that needed me to text them every day and like wanted to hear all the details of my life and vice versa.
Yeah.
Like maybe when I was younger in college, like that was a thing because you know, you go out and party and you need to recap the gossip. But like now it's just like low maintenance friends only. But like I know that's personal, and other people really like to have somebody they see every day.
Do
Yeah.
you think that those needs, at least the varying degrees of needs, relates to maybe like, because for some people, I think that maybe they have stronger needs because maybe they don't necessarily have like siblings or family structure to rely upon, or maybe they have a really good romantic relationship, so they don't really need their friendships to fulfill that kind of, you know, intensity, you know. So I kind of wonder, like, for each of us, when it comes to what we need out of friendships, how does that like relate or correlate towards our other primary relationships, which are usually familial and romantic? Because for me, like I'm the youngest of four, and even with four siblings, I feel extremely alone because my siblings, we have really, really different personalities. We can get along, but we have very different personalities. And so for that reason, I think that I seek more out of my friendships because I don't necessarily have that kind of continuous, like, close relationships with my family.
You create your own family.
I think that's super interesting because like when I've had like friendship like issues my whole life, more like not, I've always had loads of friends, but I've never had like a like that like sort of like group of friends where you all like do everything together and blah blah blah. And throughout throughout my teen years and things, like I just hated that because I wanted it so bad. Like I wanted to have like the group of people you always sit with at lunch and everyone tells you and you're all just like super close. But it's interesting because I have a really good relationship with my family for the most part, and throughout my like in the more like recent years, I haven't really I didn't really care about like, it didn't really fit in with like, I didn't really care about making those friendships. Like it didn't really matter in the same way because like most of my free time I would spend with my partner or my family and like our family friends. So it's interesting that you say that because yeah, I think that like would have an impact. Like I had, not that like my family are my friends, and I have a younger sibling, but he's like 50, and so like we don't you know like it's not, we're not friends, but like that relationship is interesting. Like what are you getting? Again, it's like, what are you looking for in your relationships? Is it companionship? Is it someone to do certain things with? Like, is it just having people to fill up your time with? Because I was spending so much time with my family, like I wasn't spending that much time with my friends anyways.
With me, what I seek out of friendships is my friends are literally my family, because I only have one other family member in the whole country that I live in. It's only me and my mum. Literally everyone else lives back in Serbia, everyone. So my friends, I tend to, if I make friends, they're going to become basically as close as family. And if they're similar to age to me, they're going to be like siblings. and I value that over relationships. And it's the same with my mum. If we have family gatherings, it's just our friends, because that is what we have to work with, you know? So we both value friendships much more than intimate relationships. I see that as an additive, an extra. I see that more as companionship, and I seek what some would seek in relationships, in friendships, emotionally. It's like
I'm
for me.
I'm the same, because I grew up without any extended family in my life. Like I had one aunt that lived in my country or place. And so like our family circle was like my like parents like friendship groups, and like it's like, yeah, you're like your own family.
Yeah,
I feel
literally
the
all
same.
my friends are like my aunties.
Yeah.
I feel the same. After I moved to London 2 years ago, I've started to create my own family, while in Denmark it wasn't as important because I had my family around. So I think there might be something to that. You seek out your own family when you're away from your actual family.
I think there's also a personality element to it, because when I think about my parents, like and also their relationship to their, because right now I'm living in a separate country to my parents, and I've been away for like a year and a half, and I've absolutely hated it, and like I miss my family a lot. But my parents have lived away from their families for over 30 years, and I was like, did you miss them? And they were like, no. Like my mom was like, no, I didn't miss, because I was like, did you like miss, like did you wish your mom was there when like you gave birth to me? She's like, no, like I didn't care. Like, but she has a traumatic childhood, and both my parents have like iffy relationships with their parents. So I think that's like an interesting thing as well, because they created a whole family like in Hong Kong, but like they didn't really miss like being away from their family. They were also older, but still, yeah, they didn't like miss their family.
Yeah,
I'm that person myself. Like I just don't see my family, and I don't miss them, and I feel like an absolute psychopath, and I feel really guilty about it. And I didn't have like a traumatic childhood or anything, but I never really lived with them. Like it was a really interesting situation. My older brother isn't very verbal, so I've never really had conversations with him at all, and that was a really bizarre experience, to not have a sibling relationship really. And then I went off to boarding school, and then I've just lived away from home since I was like 12, and so I've always just been my own family unit as an individual, and it's really bizarre, but I feel like I also don't make up for it with my friends.
No, I relate to that too. I feel like sort of similar to what, is it Yasmin? Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like I've modeled my relationship with friendship after my relationship with my parents growing up, just in the sense that because they were always busy and like not around so much, I learned as a coping mechanism to not expect like anything really. Like if I had anything at school, it was just like, yeah, you don't need to come. Like I don't expect you to come or like support or whatever. And I think that definitely extends to, I wouldn't go as far as to call it trauma, but I definitely think that definitely extends to the way that I relate to my friends, where I'm like, no, you don't need to, like, it's actually, because I also have this friend and we've had a fight before. She's really, really close with her mom, and her mom, like, growing up just used to do everything for her, was her biggest cheerleader, they would talk all the time. Even now they don't live in the same country, but they talk over the phone all the time. Like they're just really, like, really close. And I noticed that she expects that level of closeness from her friends. Like she also expects her friends to be really supportive and to be there all the time and to be talking on the phone all the time. And I'm like, wow, we have to figure this out, because like I love you, but I literally cannot give you that energy. Like I just, and it's funny, I was talking to this girl in my DMs. There was a day when I was talking about object permanence on my story, and this girl messaged me to say that she actually doesn't have object permanence with humans. So like
yeah, same. I mean,
oh my God, really?
It's really common with people autistic, ADHD.
Oh,
You know?
wow.
Like, I don't miss people when they're not around.
Yeah. She was just like, I don't think about people. Like, when someone's not around, I literally I don't think about them. And I'm like, I kind of relate to that. And like, I need people to be in the flesh for me to like have a relationship. Like, which is also what makes romance easier for me. I feel like it's harder to see your friends often, but I can't maintain a friendship over text or like digitally. I need, like, if you're not in front of me, it's not that you don't exist, but it's almost as if you don't exist. Like, I need you in the flesh for you to like really be real to me. It's like
To backtrack on the point that you were making earlier.
yeah.
So you were saying like, I don't expect and all that, but I think that has a lot, like for me, like the most sustainable way to maintain friendships for me is to stop expecting one person to be your everything.
Yeah.
So like I just started having like friendships who are like specific, and I don't mix my friends, but it's like, okay, this is my gym friend where I talk to them about the gym. This is my friend where I'm like, let's spiral. This is my friend where I'm like, this and that. Because I'm just such a and I think a lot of you are, or most people are, like, I'm just such a multi-dimensional person that I just can't have one person for everything.
Yeah.
And like, so it's just easier to have, different friends for different things, and that way it's like, and it's like, it's just easier because it's like you focus on one thing with that one person, so it's like, even if we disagree or whatever, it's like, okay, it's on one thing. And that's probably why you find romance easier, because like your partner is expected to be your everything.
Yeah,
So
I think
so it's
so.
normal for you to like, you know what I mean? Like it's like you want that, but you can't have that with friendships because it's just not sustainable.
Yeah.
But then with a partner, it's like, yeah, like that's normal. That's what you're conditioned in society. Like, yeah, that's your best friend. That's the person you meet with. That's the person, like it's just normal. Whereas it's like with a friendship, it's like you do everything together, like, like it's less common.
Yeah.
That level of vulnerability, I think that is something that I definitely have struggled with. Like I've had one boyfriend my entire life, and we weren't close, like we went on holidays together and realized that we had nothing to talk about because the dog wasn't around.
Oh, wow.
Where is the dog? How is the dog? Will we take the dog for a walk? Let's talk about the dog. I was like, oh shit, I have nothing to say to you. So I've not been in a relationship since. And I think part of it is just like I have a lot attached to like the sexual intimacy, like my that vulnerability of like, are you going to be around tomorrow? Because my experience has been, like Yasmin has said about like friends like letting her down. That's my experience with sexual partners.
Wow.
So it would be like, oh, you're here, but now you fucked off, or so like to have that kind of again and again and again is just like, okay, I can't. Whereas with friends, because it's not on the table, that vulnerability that is so fragile within me is not on the card, so I don't have to, you know what I mean? So
so
can
it's
do
like
everything.
you're using, like you're not letting anyone use that against you because it's not even a thing anymore, because you're like, oh, I don't care, I never expected you to be good in the first,
Yeah.
But I don't think that's healthy.
It's
need
not
to work on that. Like,
yeah,
we
okay.
need to.
It was interesting what you said, Bobo, about how you mirror your relationship with your parents and your friends. I just am realizing like my friends have similar relationships with their parents as I do, my closest friends. Like, do you actually have to have a similar family dynamic growing up to become friends with somebody? Like, we're all this sort of distant, but like they made us be overachievers, and we sort of hate them like a little bit. We're not like close, but it wasn't like highly traumatic, like that we don't talk to them. We all have like very similar.
I've had
your energy
just
attracts the
realizing
energy,
that.
I've had the polar opposite. All of my good friends or like good relationships have always been with people who have had like not great relationships with their parents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bubble,
Wait, do you guys Sorry, do you guys like compare? Like, for example, you'll see somebody like, happy 12 years of friendship. And I'm like, how? How
Yeah.
did you do that? You know? And I don't really have an issue with not having a friend for that long, but then you see that and you're like, okay, I'm definitely the problem.
I think
So,
that there's something though
you
that
know,
that's
like I
also-
could never.
I think there's
A lot
something
of
though
people
that's
say
also
that it's like a red flag. Oh, sorry, you go.
Oh, it's okay.
Yes, yes, yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, it's a red flag if you haven't like had friends since childhood, or like if you can't maintain long-term friendships and that. It's like, but I move too much.
Signs.
Those people have not grown or changed in any way. Like,
I
it
brand
is
every
them
week.
changing.
I'm a new person every 6 minutes. I don't care.
Literally.
Literally, I'm like, I'm not the same person I was 6 minutes ago. Like, I don't.
If you're celebrating it on the internet too, I always feel like that's a red flag.
Mm.
We've been reading
Relationships.
so much about this recently, about the way that like we formulate, because social media is such a new, like even social media now, like Instagram has only been around since what, like 2011 or 2013, something like that. Like it's only been around for like a few years, and yet it's like completely restructured society. Like I wrote like a kind of like zine idea, and then I was thinking about like how it would look on Instagram, and I was like, what is the insanity of that? Like I was thinking about also people having like children, and like I feel like people have children for Instagram now, or like they have
Probably.
No, yeah, they do.
because I was like, oh, if I was
They have
pregnant, like, I
relationships for
could take this-
Instagram.
It's for real though, like it's kind of
Like having
wild.
a new handbag now.
I feel like everything has become about how people will perceive what you're doing in your life rather than
It's always been
whether
like that.
you actually enjoy or whatever. Yeah, but I think it's been
that's
heightened with
good, isn't it?
social media for sure.
I agree. You know what I was thinking about the
I
other day? I
sometimes
was
think
thinking
that's
about.
rooted.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was thinking about gender reveals. Not only like how
Fires.
weird that is.
From the California fires.
Yeah, but like, okay, aside from the fire, first of all, like, I don't think gender reveals existed before Instagram. Like,
No, they did. The woman that like did the first like gender reveal literally like spoke about it. She wrote about it on her like blog, and the blog post like
wow.
blew up.
And now her
Yeah.
child is binary, I think. She said she regrets starting the whole thing, and her
Yeah.
child is non-binary, and she accepts them, or trans or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I have
Yeah.
a question though. How did that gender reveal party in California actually end up starting the fires?
They
I'm
use
really
like
confused about that.
So
Sorry?
something
they
like a
use like
cracker.
fireworks or like
Wow.
explosions to
Oh,
announce the
really?
color.
I would not keep that baby. Sorry.
That's
Yeah.
so
That is
funny
bad
though.
luck.
So
What?
ironic.
Like, what kind of child? Like
Bad
that's the
vibes. Hold on, I have to open the door for someone. I'll be back in like 30 seconds.
Like
One
the
sec.
sky is literally so shitty out right now because of these fires.
Where do you live?
I live in LA.
Oh,
Oh
so
no.
it's really sad. I can't even open my windows. Like the air quality is total shit right now.
I think this is like absolutely wild because like I live in Canberra and we had the worst of the Australian bushfires last summer. So like everyone here has been like, oh, it was the bushfires and then coronavirus and there's going to be some other natural disaster at the end of the year. Turns out it's just like another bushfire.
I live in
people are like, oh, just wait till December 31st.
Yeah.
You realize that's just a number. It doesn't do anything. Are you dumb?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, it's just gonna keep going. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, in Australia for sure, in Victoria at least where I live, the way we're going, we're going to be in like under these coronavirus restrictions until just before bushfire season starts again.
Yeah. Well, the problem
Same group again, exact same thing over, for sure.
like here, a lot of people from Australia, like a lot of firefighters came here to like help fight the fires. And so we don't have that now. And we also, you know, we're using prison labor a bunch.
That is so insane.
So now it's just like those factors have just like spun this whole thing out of control. And because of coronavirus and everything being shut down, people that don't have any sense of like how to like leave no trace are like just going out into the woods and like throwing ragers and then like setting the dry land on fire and being like, oh, whoops. Like,
I feel like, and no offense to all the Americans here, but I feel like it's such a like perfect like round off of American culture that like a huge like wildfire was started from a gender reveal party and like some like smoke machine or whatever that just like wasn't attended to properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys think that being happy is like a like something that's like reasonable, not reasonable, like
No, I love this question.
I was just thinking about that because I was thinking about like I had a conversation with my mom recently because my partner and I were talking about friendships and like, you know, we've moved and we haven't really made like lots of friends. And I was thinking about my mom and how like I grew up and she always had all these friends, but she was like, you know, like I've always felt the same way, you know. She was like, it doesn't, like, friendships fluctuate and you don't always like that. It's hard to ever feel like fully satisfied. And I feel like it's what you were saying, how like the human condition is dissatisfaction. Because I was thinking like, I keep saying the term before. I don't know what time I'm referring to, but just the general before now. Like, do you think that they expected to be happy in life?
Yeah, like I was just gonna ask, is it realistic to be happy? Because literally I know like 3 happy people and they all live in a bubble. Like literally a bubble.
I know
So I'm
like person and he's the dumbest. He's so dumb it's actually offensive. Like it's like it really, but it's like his stupidity ruins everyone else's life. Like he has a kid that he doesn't really care for, like he doesn't really like attend to him. He's so, I just don't think he has the range to be miserable, if that makes sense. Like I feel like misery requires
The more intelligent you are.
Truly, like which is why I love that question. Like I just don't think happiness is reasonable.
But happiness is an emotion, and therefore happiness comes and goes because emotions comes and goes.
Right.
So people are chasing happiness when happiness isn't even a permanent state that you can actually maintain. I was reading some Ram Dass recently, and it's like there's 3 forms. There's 3
Ram Dass is my dad. Like I love him.
Love him. 3 forms of like the state is like, one is like pleasure, which is the, you know, the ego state, like it feels good, it's short-lived. And then there's happiness, which is emotion, which comes and goes. And then there's joy and love, which are states of being. So the secret to getting to joy and love as a state of being is to quieten your mind, because your mind brings all the suffering. Like my mom always says to me, she's like, what are you doing reading there now? I'd say you read too much and that's why you're so unhappy. Like she's just like, you think too much, you know too many things. That is why you are the way you are. And I'm just like, no, Mom, I need to know these things so I can like post on my stories. You know?
Does she lie though? Does she lie?
Yeah, no, like facts. Like
she made points. Like it's kind of true.
Existential depression is like a real thing, and I think it afflicts a lot of us against our will.
Would you give up your like intelligence or like this kind of like
immediately?
Yeah.
I
would. No.
I would fully be a.
I would.
But
why do I question everything? Why can't I just be? You know? Why do I like stop? You know, like I don't know. My brain is definitely broken.
I wish if I could revert and be like super dumb and like super superficial, like done, because I wouldn't even have the range to think that I'm being superficial. So like who cares? Like,
but
I want
I love that like fake agency, even though there is no free will. Like that idea that you're choosing, you've assessed everything and then you're choosing how to exist. I wouldn't want that choice taken away from me. Like I'm trying to cultivate contentness and like mindfulness and like appreciating the small moments, but having known that I could choose depression. Not that it's always.
Also, who's to say that we're that smart? Like, maybe we're just
Yeah,
like.
exactly.
Yeah, maybe
What
we're
if they think? What if dumb people think we're like
We're
the
dumb.
opposite? So
I've been thinking about that alien thing so much, and I fully decided that like they definitely know we exist and just don't think we're worth it, or they're
Yes.
already in the room. Like there's like 17 aliens in my room right now, but they're like so advanced that I can't even like comprehend their existence.
I just
They're
finished this
just sitting
book.
here
The
with their
guy,
popcorn, like.
this guy from the CIA was saying like, who it's to say they left. That basically, I read a book that was like highly government, you know, that was basically like they've been around. They've
The
been around. They've
aliens?
been deciding whether to engage, and so far, no.
Oh, I believe in there's this theory called directed panspermia, which is this theory that aliens are our gods. Basically,
Oh.
they've seeded life on different planets or like in different galaxies.
Like
And then
Prometheus.
what was this?
Like the movie Prometheus. That was the premise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet, but I will. But yeah, basically aliens have seeded life on multiple planets or galaxies, and then they go back and they watch us and control us from there. I also feel like aliens exist. Wow, I literally just saw a weird object flying in the sky as we were talking. Okay, I also feel, yeah, like they're literally watching. I also feel like aliens exist, but on like, you know how we exist on the third dimension? I feel like there's like fifth dimensional
Oh yeah,
aliens
totally.
that are like sitting on me right now. Like there's an alien like sitting on my lap that I just can't perceive with my small 3-dimensional brain. So, and he's just like going off, like he's doing all the things.
are you talking about germs?
Well, also like in the fifth dimension.
Germs, bacteria are our aliens, but we've just like tried to formulate them into like something that makes sense to us.
Wait, what if Corona's the alien? Like, what if
Corona's the reset button.
Oh,
It's like installed into Earth, and in case of disaster, like press this,
yeah,
you know, and then it's just like boom, okay, send the guys out. They like fuck up your heart and shit. Like, oh my god.
oh my god, yeah, Corona's the alien.
Aliens are our only real friends is the conclusion.
can you call your
Careful.
friend crazy for saying masks are not meant? Look at us.
Yeah, we're gonna
Look at
start a
us.
new.
Exactly. Who am I to judge this poor woman? You know.
If anyone has Netflix, check out an anime called Parasite, and it's with a Y. It's really interesting. It's actually about how these foreign, they look like germs. They kind of arrive onto planet Earth, and they start like sprouting like plants, but they sprout near people and take over their bodies. It's very interesting. It's like alien
The Expanse has like a similar thing too.
consciousness.
So the idea of the Terence McKenna book that I'm reading is talking all about this, how like the mushrooms led to the advancement of the human brain. That it was through, you know, huh?
Is this food of the gods?
Yes, yeah. And just like that, we're capable of a lot more things. And something I struggle with like Ram Dass book I'm reading at the moment, he talks about his guru like a Maharaji, and he talks about him like he exists in all these planes and he's this being and all this stuff. And it's really difficult for me to buy into it because I don't, you know, I'm just like whatever. But then also at the same time, you have these like psychedelic mushrooms that take you to, you know, who's to say what's possible and what's impossible. It's just that we're so limited with our senses that, you know, if we had, you know, awakened beings, if we were awakened beings ourselves, we could probably be like, oh no, we are the alien who has created us, you know. I don't know.
I think it's also interesting that we like look at like when you are under the influence of like a drug, like that you're, you know, we look at the experiences as like not being true, or like it's not real. Like the experience that you had was like not a true or real experience. It was because of like your brain chemistry. But like, isn't that just as real and true as what my experience is right now? Because my experience right now is fully formed by my brain chemistry as well.
Oh,
like we'll all be experiencing this moment differently. So I think it's interesting that we put the label of like not true or unreal on things like like manic episodes or
schizophrenia.
It's like that you're not living in reality.
Our brains have sort of evolved into this, like, whatever seemed the most useful for evolution, but then there are plenty of people that have these divergent types of brains, including myself, and like it's not useful, especially in modern society, to like be overwhelmed by stimuli all the time. But at the same time, for a period it might have helped, and so maybe we could evolve into a different brain chemistry in the right conditions. Like, could we evolve to be on shrooms as our
There's actually this theory about ADHD that it used to be the most common human brain back when we were hunter-gatherers, because a lot of things about ADHD would help us in that scenario. But then because of evolution and like that, all society is way, way, way different today. A lot of people, like ADHD would be the neurotypical back then, but then now the neurotypical is different because that's more helpful in a world today.
I think being sedentary has like I don't know whether it's made us like more advanced or whether it's really made us like completely lose touch with whatever like
both
animals are, because like there aren't really any other animals that are sedentary in the way that we are.
Pandas, they don't even fuck.
Yeah,
we have to move. What? Like, why are we wasting time on pandas when they don't even want to have sex with each other? This is my question. You know?
Really? Wait. I didn't know this.
Pandas, they're like get them in zoos and they're like, come on guys, come on, do it. Like we have to breed them because they're too lazy.
Is it like koalas though, where they just don't have the energy because they just eat the plant eucalyptus stuff and they just don't have energy?
Well, that's me. But I also feel like, hard work is against my religion. Like, I fundamentally don't believe in working hard. And I think we'd all be better off if we were actually more like sloths. When I look at the way, if a sloth just lays in a tree all day,
they actually move all day.
Wow! Oh, really? They're just that slow.
So slow.
Sloths actually sleep the same amount of time as us, so they only sleep like 8 hours. Versus even a cat sleeps like 19 hours on average.
Wow!
So, like they actually don't sleep as much as people. Sorry, I had to be a sloth I did animal work and I was a sloth, so I like know all these random facts about sloths. So funny. But yeah, they actually like move. They're actually the most efficient. Like they're so efficient because they don't have a lot of energy to put out because they just eat all day. They eat leaves.
Wait,
all day.
I'm literally a sloth. You describe me. I feel seen.
Oh my God.
They only like poo once every like week or 2 weeks because they have to go down to the ground and it's like dangerous for them, obviously.
Oh my God, they're like me and showering. I'm just like, I cannot be bothered.
That's efficient. They
have to get undressed.
Let's go.
It's so interesting. They're one of like the most like fascinating animals that we have because they're actually quite like almost prehistoric in terms of the animals like that we actually have, and so like they're super interesting sloths.
Why do they exist?
That being lazy, but they're actually super smart in some ways.
Wow.
Not necessarily like
the sloth.
I hate that human beings determine what intelligence animals that they can't even talk to have. Like, why are you talking shit about pigs?
I know.
You don't know what they're doing. You don't know their emotional intelligence. Like, honestly, they're like, oh, this one is stupid. Just because they're slow moving. It's just such a strange lens to apply to animals. Like,
I know.
Whatever.
But I don't know if that's like a universal thing or like specific to like mainly like modern Western society, because like, and if there's anybody that's like an Indigenous Australian or Indigenous otherwise, like please correct me, but like in Australia, like my understanding is that the relationship to the animals was quite different. Like I know that there was like somewhere along the coast there were these like dolphins, and like the people that lived or like the people that are from that area use the dolphins to catch food, and the dolphins got like rewards. So they had this like fully like mutually beneficial relationship between like the people and the dolphins about like for food and to survive. And then once Australia was colonized and like settlers got in that area, the relationship maintained for a bit, and then one day like someone like a settler shot one of the dolphins, and they've never come back in that like bay again.
I think
So
it's because like Westernism, perhaps. I don't even know if that's the right terminology. Like we tend to trivialize nature because we found a way to kind of exist in a bubble slightly outside of nature. We've been able to kind of, and it's not like we don't have true independence from nature, but we have a kind of distant relationship. So we kind of view nature and animals and these sort of things as beneath us because we
like
found
uncivilized.
Yeah, which isn't, it's not like true, it's just we seem to exist in this way and act on it. It's really
Question
Sure.
for everyone. What do you
Western
think would...
societies are like
Oh,
see
sorry.
themselves as external to like nature, whereas
Gavin
indigenous
here.
cultures are like you're a part of the ecosystem.
yes.
Like there's a saying in my cultures like nature isn't like there, we are nature.
Yeah. What do you guys think would make humans less dissatisfied?
Ooh.
Death.
Like, what do you guys think is like our natural state of being?
This is maybe not an answer to your question, but we just use this. Everybody I worked with in my first job out of school, that we would like work crazy hours, and we said happiness equals outcome minus expectations. So the lower your perceived outcome and the less expectations you have, the better, the happier you are.
I think
Would
it's
have to exist outside of capitalism to kind of enter into that, because I feel like capitalism is constantly telling us to want and get more things, and it's a recipe for constant dissatisfaction, it seems like.
Absolutely.
I think we need a common communal, that's the same word, goal, like project to be working on. We're all like, it's the individualism of society is a problem. Like back in the day, they were working on the pyramids for 600 years or so, you know, like it was like a ongoing projects that like united people. Like here we have similar like monuments, everyone is working towards this goal. And I find that with like getting more into therapy and spirituality has given me like a much more like this, I don't have a purpose outside of like, I don't know what I want to do, I don't know what my skills are really. I have X amount of things that I'm interested in, like shiny things everywhere, and I can't decide. But the thing, one constant thing in my life is therapy and like kind of getting to know myself and spirituality and like all this kind of thing. And it's really, it's the thread that holds my life together in a huge way. And when disaster hits, like in Ireland we have this thing called mehel. It's an old Irish word about when coming together and the community, especially farmers, work together to help each other through. And a couple of years ago, we had a storm Ophelia where we had like 2 feet of snow and it shut down the entire country for 4 days. Like, I mean, we can't handle snow in Ireland. And like businesses were closed, people couldn't go to work, everyone was drunk. Like it was like everyone was out and like helping each other. Farmers were helping each other. There was businesses coming together, and there was this real spirit of togetherness. And the coronavirus kind of brought out the same thing. And I think it's that like the governments aren't setting like, okay guys, we are working towards this year. We're going to try and build the best hospital. So we're going to, there's no like goal for
No, I agree.
everyone.
Oh my God. Yeah. I often think about humanity as just a puzzle, and everyone is just one little puzzle piece. But the problem is we're all trying to be the same type of puzzle piece. Like we're all trying to be Gary Vaynerchuk and Kim Kardashian. Like, and so
Everyone thinks they're their own puzzle instead of being
yeah,
part, being a puzzle piece. That's a nice.
that's yeah, you know what I mean? Which I
Yeah.
think is like the cause of all suffering. Just like the illusion that you are significant on your own. Like we're all just
Or
like
that no man is an island. No man is an island. Do you
yeah.
know that poem by John Donne?
I don't,
Entirely.
but I agree. Like on our own, we're all trash. But like, if everyone just stayed in their lane and minded their business, we'd actually, I think we'd eliminate at least like 50% of suffering.
Oh, well, what were you gonna ask? You said question for you all, and then you didn't finish.
Oh, really?
I think she asked it. You asked it.
Oh yes, I asked what would make us less dissatisfied.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's what do you guys think would make humans less dissatisfied? Or do you think dissatisfaction is what keeps us alive? Like is that
I think that's how
sometimes
we
I think
got.
that's
I think
the
that's how we
paradox.
got here, right? Like
Yeah.
we didn't get this far because we were satisfied. Like if we were satisfied, we would have stopped a long time ago.
Is that also like the biological imperative to survive?
What dissatisfaction?
Yeah. Is it like, do you think it's similar?
Ooh.
I kind of think so. I kind of feel like the reason why most people don't just kill themselves is because they are dissatisfied. So you think that there can be more because you're so aware of your own pain. So you think like, oh, but it'll therefore get better because I know how bad it is.
Oh my God. I do
Wow.
often, I know this sounds like a rude question, but I do often wonder why so many people don't kill themselves. Do you guys ever wonder?
I
I
for
wonder
me,
that all the time.
When I was living in New York City, I thought this, and maybe just because I was surrounded by so many people, but yeah.
Yeah, like do you guys, why hasn't Trump killed himself? Like do you guys ever wonder?
See, for me, it's the question of
I don't think Trump could even imagine he inflicts on other people.
yeah, he's obsessed with himself.
He's obsessed with it. Yeah, he's fully thinks that he's
Pleasure.
absolute
He
legend.
lacks the humility to even.
Yeah.
and like this planet is heaven. This planet is heaven for like cis het white men.
True.
Like,
True.
why would they?
His addiction has kept him alive, like addictions keep people alive, like drugs keep people alive. You know, his addiction to money and fame, that's like the pleasure, that's his hit, you know.
Yeah.
Like people on heroin are, that's their way of staying in the world and not killing themselves. There's that, you know, if they didn't have heroin, they'd probably die, you know.
Do you guys think
There's-
more people would kill themselves if it wasn't taboo? Like if it was just, if they were just donate the hospitals on every corner, do you think the world population would halve?
I think Flex posted on her story the other day about how Gen Z like would, I don't know, like 75% would like the answers were like 75% would kill themselves if it wasn't for, well, like they feel pain on other people inflicted.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I think it's also like youth and age. Like I don't know. I think so many teenagers feel that way, and like so much of it is hormones. I don't know, for me at least.
so many people are trying to avoid pain in their lives instead of incorporating pain. Like it's this silliness that we've been sold, that your life should be happiness because we've been indoctrinated and propagandized through film, etc. It's like this the phantom pain. I think I spoke about this before, where I wrote this poem about phantom love, that like I'm looking at two people together and I have a loneliness for that because I'm seeing it and I don't have it in my own life. So the same applies with like, oh, this person has this car or this person has this thing. There's like a pain of not having not having the thing, and so people need to soothe their pain, but we haven't taught people how to soothe their pain and how to, you know, live with suffering, and we've given them like these
medications,
I mean
distractions.
Medication. Yeah, I mean, like,
do you think being suicidal is part of human nature? Like, is that just another step that
I think
we all
question, because I don't know if it's necessary, because it may be the case, but I kind of wonder how much of that is in relation to like living in our current modern societies or civilization structures, you know?
I agree, because I
Yeah.
also think like I always wonder about like whether like why is it that within the past like 50 years like mental health or like this like widespread deep dissatisfaction has become known? Is it because it like exists more? Is it because we have the terminology to talk about it? Is it because there's more acceptance? Like what is it, because there is actually more dissatisfaction and more divergence from like mentally sane?
I think there's
Or
room for it, like now. Like you have the room to explore those thoughts, I think. Like my parents were like, the biggest concern was trying to flee war. They didn't have time to be like, am I happy? I'm just trying to live, you know? I'm just
Yeah,
trying
I
to
think it's the
survive.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like we've progressed almost as a society and a world to the point where there's much less focus on having enough and a lot more time to think about that stuff. And I also think that we are, and our society has been designed by the trauma of the past generations. And like part of that is why we're suffering. We're suffering under their lack of ability to process or think about any of these things. So that just got worse and worse and worse and worse, and it's like bubbling up into our faces in some sense.
Yes. I also have a theory that like, I know this is far-fetched, it's just a
Let's
theory.
go.
My
That never stopped you,
today.
Bobo.
No. I actually have a theory that everyone is suicidal, but hear me out, hear me out. I think that social media is proof that everyone is okay. Let me talk about our generation. I think our entire generation, like Gen Y, Gen Z, just millennials, I think we're all suicidal, and that's why we're all on social media, because it's the only way to actually opt out of existence without like fully committing. It's like psychological suicide, but you're not fully committing to. But I think if people really interrogated why we are all such escapists and why we're always constantly escaping the present moment, always constantly escaping ourselves, always pursuing something in the future, and like you can't be pursuing and also existing at the same time. So actually like every single one of our actions is just a byproduct of being suicidal at all times. But that's just too much to confront. So I think it just exists in our subconscious, and it manifests itself as escapism, as like the pursuit of success, as capitalism, as just this never-ending treadmill that we're on that actually does nothing for us except leave us running away from ourselves constantly.
I just sent an article that talked about this. It's like the death drive. The social media as a personification is the Freudian death drive.
Bitch, I need to read it immediately.
All right, send it.
So social media for me is like cutting for other people, because on social media and like for a bunch of other people, you can control your life on there. You can control what's being posted, the aesthetic, everything like that. So because like my family life is like hectic, like my social media account, my feed is so nice, and like that's something I can control. Like people cut themselves because they can control their life. So that's how I see social media. And I think a lot of people subconsciously are dealing with that too. They use it as a way of trying to control their life.
Interesting. I agree.
Yeah.
I think that all goes back to what Christina was saying about not knowing how to self-soothe. And like I think about this all the time in relation to music, because I've always said to myself that like music is my religion of like what I would turn to when I'm upset. And like if I'm like heavily depressed, I will like sit in a completely dark room and like put on like the saddest music and be completely in the void except for with this emotion, and then it doesn't feel bad, it just feels really full and complete. And I think a lot of people like don't see sadness and negative emotions and loss as like completeness, but like if you can like like really feel it fully, that in itself is really soothing, because then it's catharsis, it's not negative.
that's the whole method, one of the methods behind my therapy. For definitely, like, I've gone from being like like drugs, alcohol, sex, to drugs, alcohol, sex, conspiracy theories, to drugs, alcohol, sex, smoking, to drugs, alcohol, sex, smoking, something else, and then eventually I've gotten it down to sugar and reading things on the internet. So it's like, sex had to go first for a while. That was causing me a lot of trouble. And then obviously alcohol followed, and then the smoking followed, and now I've kind of got it down, and I'm learning to kind of self-soothe bit by bit.
Yeah.
But all of those are coping strategies. They're all coping strategies, and and learning how to feel my own emotions was like, my therapist literally used to be like, "How do you feel?" And I'd be like, "What do you mean? I feel fine."
Like, I think we're so afraid of feeling that we like cope so that we don't have to feel, instead of just sitting and actually like jumping off the cliff and feeling things.
Yeah.
I read something about how Western culture is like an alcoholic culture, so the only time you were allowed to show emotions was when you were drunk.
Yeah.
And that we co-evolved with that, like, to be a cultural thing that you don't show anything until you're in a situation like that. But I also just rewatched Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, and it's all about their anxiety about going back to see the people they went to school with and how much they've accomplished and how great their lives are. And I realized we live that every single day, our generation.
Wow.
It's like an everyday reunion of comparing against everybody else.
Wow.
You guys ever see yourself going like completely offline in the near
That's my
future?
dream. That is literally when I
What did you say?
That's like my dream in life, to just not have to be. I feel like I enjoy the conversations I have on social, but it's also so I feel the way that my behavior and my emotions have been manipulated and simulated, and I'm like, I want to go back to being a human being. Like, I want to.
I think if everybody went off, it's so much better than just you going off. Because like I've been off for like, I've talked about this before in the Discord, like 2-3 years now, and it's like great and all, and like what you're saying, like the positives and stuff, but like it's major FOMO, and it's also like, I don't know, it's just everybody just feel, I don't know, you just feel like there's something wrong with you, not necessarily wrong, but just like you're just out of the loop constantly.
I went off.
Sorry.
It's okay. I went offline for like 2 years or something like that, and then when I moved here, like it just like wasn't. It just didn't feel as viable, because like the like everybody at uni was like, well, like where how do we like connect?
It's not sustainable. Yeah.
It's like, when everybody else is on it, it's quite isolating to be off, because you miss out on a lot of the like, or even I like there's somebody in my course that doesn't have like Facebook, and so he wasn't on like any of our group chats, and so he often like didn't know about plans, and like he had to like rely on someone like thinking about him and texting him and being like, oh, by the way, everybody's like going out and doing this thing.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's the thing with social media, is that it literally is another realm of existence. And something I think about too, I was talking to my boyfriend about this, where so after social media is going to be a chip, like it's just going to be a chip in your brain that you're just plugged into 20. And at that point, he was asking me like, are you going to get the chip? And I was like, no, like I'm actually. And then he was like, but what if I get the chip? I was like, well, if you get the chip, we might as well break up, because you're going to be living in your own realm of existence, and I'm going to be living in another one.
But realistically, you'll probably will get the chip if everybody gets the chip.
That's the thing, because like now you're on a whole other planet by yourself if you're the only one without the chip, you know?
Yeah.
And I think they primed us to be this way with social media, because it's network effects. That's how it works. It has no value in and of itself. Its only value is that it forces you into like another planet.
I think it also forces, well, not maybe forces the wrong word, but like it makes us create like structures around identity that I think we wouldn't have had before. Like we're really like held to what we identify with as a form of presenting yourself as like not even necessarily palatable, but like as a structured, cohesive like object that you can now like market. Even those of us like who don't use social media for any kind of like actual profit. Like even think about my brother, who I said is like 15, and like it's just so funny looking at him and his like friends social. They're also all like neurodivergent, so it's like a little bit different as well, but seeing how they like think about like numbers and like and just the way that they market themselves. Yeah, like he markets himself, even though like he doesn't have many friends and he's 15, and like he doesn't, but still his social media is like him attempting to replicate like an influencer.
Wow.
He's just a brand.
So fascinating to me.
Wow. Bobo, how did you even navigate that world when you were like in the fashion fiend persona and all that stuff?
Oh, wow. I really hated it actually. I think I just felt, so I used to think that I'm passionate about fashion.
Passion for fashion.
Yeah, I was that bitch. But yeah, I used to be an accountant, and then I was like, wait, no, I'd actually rather deep throat a cactus than be an accountant. And then I thought, well, I like dressing up. It was such a like, I can't believe this was my logic, but I guess this is the logic when you're young. I was like, wait, I like dressing up, so I should work in fashion. And I like really convinced myself that that's my passion. And then I actually started working in the fashion industry and was like, wow, the levels of white supremacy, patriarch, like just the levels of everything trash. And then I had to like really sit with myself and be like, there was a point where like I was working for this brand and I went to Amsterdam to do the shoot for them. And then, oh shit, am I frozen? Oh my God. Hello?
So relevant.
Um,
People don't respect, because now like I came like to uni, but I have like 80 followers on it, and it's literally just like people I currently go to uni with, and then like closer friends from like home. But like it's weird that people don't respect it. Like I get follower requests, absolute random, like, can't you see that I have 80 followers? Like we barely know each other. Like I've met you like 3 times. Like, why do you want to follow me? Like, why do you care about my life? It's so
People are
irrelevant.
to a degree that's like stalkerish, and it's like in like social media world, it's bizarre.
I'm actually starting a podcast called A Woman's Place, because there's like Ireland, our constitution, well, in the constitution, that says women's. So it's quite, yeah, like it's in the constitution, but obviously it's not enacted or whatever. But like Ireland has a huge like history of misogyny, in like state sanctioned misogyny. It was basically a fascist religious state from the years like the 20s until the 90s. We had like prisons basically for pregnant women, and lots of children died. Like it's pretty crazy. So I'm starting this and trying to like kind of remember Irish women, and internationally as well, women internationally. But one of the things my sister, because I was complaining that, oh, I have this artist like thing and I don't have many followers, and my sister put an idea into my head, and she was just like, you have to give something to people, you know, like that's, in order to grow, it has to be of value. And I realized I wasn't giving anything of value. I was trying to get things off people. Like it was very ego based, you know, my artist one. And I was like, I want followers. Like when you want followers, you don't get it. You know what I mean? It was like, and now I find, but what I find with the podcast, which I'm recording a second episode tomorrow, but it's just way more natural when I want to like be like, oh, here's information, because I'm learning as well. It's just way more natural. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to, because I'm a digital marketer by trade. Like I do communications and social media management. So like it's so easy for me to do captions and write shit and like post pictures. But when it comes to my own stuff, I am like terrible. Like I'm growing an audience. I'm like so bad. I'm like, how am I so bad at this? But I realized it's because of that block. I was like I had the wrong objective basically in what I was trying to do. So yeah, I think it's but I also agree that like I don't know, I'd like to get off it, I think, but I also quite like Instagram, so I don't know.
I have
limited
a
my
question. I have a question about social media. This is something I've been thinking about recently. So do you think that with social media, we are the consumers or are we the product?
Definitely the product.
Product. Yeah.
You seen the
Oh,
new
yeah.
Netflix
If
documentary
it's
about
free.
it?
We're the
What
workers and the
documentary?
product.
I think we're both though. Our
It's
data
called
is
The
the
Social
product.
Dilemma.
And then we're like self-eating, we're the self-eating snake.
Yeah,
You know,
we're
our
everything.
data is being sold, so we're the product, and then we're also the consumer because we're buying shit off it. Like it's a marketing platform essentially.
I think though, like, what do you think it would be like if if the if there was no way that you could monetize the like social media, like if there was no way you could monetize YouTube, Instagram, like there was absolutely no way you could like make money online, how do you think
It would be more
And
wholesome.
it wouldn't exist.
But
It would
wasn't
be
that
like-
Instagram literally like 5 years ago?
Yeah, and Facebook when we were like when I was in high school, you know, it was just like photos for your friends.
Yeah.
Influencers wouldn't exist because I feel like they're literally just walking advertisements. I feel like
Yeah.
they're easier to attain, like makeshift models, you know, literally, like that's
But
their
they-
whole job. And I feel like I'm inclined to think of like Australian influencers, not Flex. She doesn't know what the fuck she wants. She doesn't care. Like the more basic ones,
Yeah.
like I feel like if there's no money in it, they literally have no reason. They don't care. They don't care, and they pretend to care about their followers, but they're just walking advertisements, really, and that's what brands would see them as well. It seems like.
But
At
do you
least.
wanna finish what you were saying about the fashion world before
Oh my god.
cut off?
Yeah, I know. Zoom just kicked me out randomly. But yeah, I used to work in fashion and it just wasn't what I thought it would be. I just expected it to be so glamorous and like then I thought being an influencer would be so like fun, and then you realize like wait, these brands don't respect you, like they actually just treat you like shit. And then this one brand that I was working with, they flew me to Amsterdam to do the shoot and I was so excited to do it, and then I got there and they were like, oh no, you look too ghetto, like actually like yeah, they were just so blatantly racist. Like they didn't even try to hide. Like they didn't even. I was like, at the very least, like pretend, fam. And then yeah, I had an asthma attack on that trip. Like they put me in this house that they called a model house, where they like like they just like put models there and they fly them in. And it was really dirty and it was just disgusting. And then I have asthma, so I got an asthma attack because it was so dusty and like all that. And then I was like, wait, this is gonna be my, like I have to choose right now. Like, do I love this career enough to put up with like racist white people who don't respect me? Also, they were underpaying me too. Like it was just so many things where I was like, do I actually love this thing enough to be putting up with all this shit? Then I realized, wait, actually I don't get anything out of being in this career path. And then yeah, I went through a really deep depression where I was like, fuck, I don't know what I want to do. Yeah, it was just like I have no idea.
Also,
And
that's so not you. Like, can you imagine Bobo, a Fashion Nova model?
Like,
hey guys,
like
use
go
my
to Fashion
code.
Week. I was that
my
bitch. Like I used to go to Fashion Week. Like I was just at all the things, but never actually like being myself. And then I realized anytime that I would, I think that's also why I'm so anti influencers, because I've been around them for so long, and I feel like I don't think they're malicious, but I think they're conditioned to be poisonous. I don't think they do anything on purpose, but I don't think they interrogate anything enough to be like, what effect am I having on people? Like when you like spend months with people who only talk about how much weight they're losing, I was like, what effect is this having on me? Like, I don't want to talk about weight loss. I don't want to talk about curly hair. I don't want to talk about who has like the clearest skin. Like, this is so unhealthy.
Do you think you would have came to that realization if you fit in? Like if you were actually part of it and then like
I don't think I actually, no, you're right. I literally don't think I would. I think,
yeah, you'd probably be like, oh, this is
yeah,
fire.
I think
But
like,
is it our fault for all following people that only talk about weight loss and like hair texture
yeah,
and
because
that
the
kind
thing is that like when you're around they'd have these things called influencer brunches, where like a brand will invite you to like a restaurant with like 20 other influencers, and the whole time everyone's on their phone just checking their comments and like you're not even engaging, like we're not making friends, we're not talking about anything. And so then you realize that like their world is in their phone, like their entire reality is in their phone, and like every comment that they see that's like, yes queen, like that's just perpetuating their priorities, which is mostly just weight loss and hair. Like that's pretty much where it ends. And then on top of that, they're not even getting paid. Like you like earn minimum wage and you're still doing, and it's like, why don't you guys interrogate? Like these brands aren't even paying you properly. Like they're treating you like shit, and you're doing all of this for some dopamine hits online. Like what is, then I think like, who is toxic? Is it the audience or is it the influencers? Like it's a chicken and egg thing, you know? Like who's really the clown here? Is it us for following people and being like, yes, your waist is so snatched, and then like that's all they think about all day is like that same comment, and like now I have to maintain a snatched waist. Like, so who's poisonous here? Is it the audience or is it, I don't know, what do you guys think? Like
whoever's
I
trying to
actually
sell us that shit.
It's the brands.
Yeah.
The brands are at the top, and they mentally manipulate the walking advertisements, influencers, who then have that impact on us, the consumers.
Yeah.
The brands run the shit, I reckon.
I actually think it's an entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
Like I don't blame anyone. Like would you blame the tiger for eating the little rat, and like would you eat the rat, blame the rat for eating the grass, and then the grass goes back to be the tiger again? Like I just think it's the exact same thing. Like it's our faults for buying into social media. It's brands' faults for preying on us, but it's also not their fault because we're such easy prey. Like why wouldn't they?
Literally.
and they want to make money because that's life, and then like it's just
Yeah, like that's what they're here for. You can't blame them for doing what they're here for.
That's
Yeah, they're also just made up of human beings, and this is the conversation I was having with the boys last night. I was like, do men like strategically do shit to fuck with you, or are you just stupid? And he was like, we are just stupid. I was like, okay.
They're just stupid. Yeah, they just echo all the other boys' behaviors that has built up an entire system of oppressing women. Like, it's not their
Yeah,
fault.
but they're
but
not
it
actually
is.
doing it on purpose. Like they don't have a grand scheme to like manipulate you. They're just like, and then fuck up, and then it feels like, you know, all of the weight that you've been carrying for generations.
Yeah,
I think it's like
And
neural.
women also play into that as well, because generally it's women that are raising these boys. So it's all like, it's an ecosystem, like you said.
It's really hard though to like change your neural pathways, like rewiring your brain after they've been set in a certain way. And I think all of us here are really into that. Or maybe like I wonder if we all have like more brain plasticity. But yeah, like we're into learning, but like it's really hard to do. And even for myself, it is hard to do when I've had like certain, like having an eating disorder and having to like break out of that. So I think when society gets
How did
good at
you?
things, I mean, therapy is like number one. I
Yeah.
think, like, and also growth and like, I don't know, self-worth, all the things that Christina was mentioning about self-soothing. It's just another addiction. It's just another, you know, self-soothing mechanism when you have trouble with emotional regulation, which I definitely did. But it's also the culture and it's also society, and like learning that none of these things are true, none of this is objective, you're not better because you're thin. Like all of that is just designed to sell you shit and is racist, and you know, all these things come from a desire to oppress you.
Yeah.
So, but it is really hard to rewire, and I think a lot of people don't have the incentive or the range or the time or the money or whatever it is to spend that time rewiring their brains. It's sort of a privilege.
And like supermodel culture was huge when I was growing up. Like the 90s was Kate Moss, you know, like that was, I spent my time not like literally, I would eat like a sandwich a day, and I would just like obsess over trying to be a model because everyone told me I could be a model because I was so tall. And in reality, they were just fooling themselves because I was nowhere near as slim or as tall as them, but I had it in my head that I could be. So I spent my time like just like, but my body was not able to cope. Like when I was 14, I had like a physical and emotional breakdown because I just started fainting because I wasn't eating enough.
Wow.
And so like after that, I was just like, okay, well, we're not going to get to be a model then. So I mean, my body was literally like, no. It wouldn't let me go below a certain weight. Before it was just like, no, we're done. You're not doing this. So it was a strange one, but that was another addiction, you know, like that addiction to trying to be, trying to be
crazy that like almost every girl ends up with an event at some point. You'll have an eating disorder. Like,
I mean, every celebrity now is starting to come forward talking about it, whether it's Taylor Swift or Charlie D'Amelio from TikTok just talked about it.
Yeah.
So it's the culture is so toxic, it's so sick, and you think you're the only one struggling with it, and you can't even often realize you have it because it's so normalized in society. Like for years, I thought I was just being healthy.
Yeah, same.
Like, so disordered.
Can you believe that someone like Charlie D'Amelio is like as famous as she is, and she's like 16, and she's like,
that shit should be illegal. No one under the age of 25 should be allowed to even be on Instagram. Like that shit should be like to be famous. No. Like that.
That's what they did to Britney.
It's exploited at some level, unfortunately. I just feel like that's that comes with being in that territory. It's like the older people that are in that industry like prey on the younger people. So I feel bad for anyone that is young and famous.
They also prey on, this isn't a roast, like I'm not roasting anyone, but they also prey on like the dumb. Like if you're, or maybe it's not dumbness, it's meek. If you're too meek to like stand up for yourself, or like if you don't question anything, if you don't interrogate, like that's what Hollywood loves. Like
that might be part of the reason why younger people are becoming more famous.
Yeah.
Like what's that girl's, Addison Rae, I don't know how old she is, maybe like 16, 17 or something. If she's handed these opportunities, she's probably conditioned by people around her to think that she'd be dumb to say no and be ungrateful. You just stack things up on your plate that you don't even know how to do, and here you are doing 1,000,001 things, and you don't even know if you're happy about it.
Yeah.
But isn't this, this is
like I think about all the people, like especially now, like YouTube in the past like 2 or 3 years has become like such a different scene, and it's so much younger. Like I'm only 20, but I look at like other people my age who like own straight up houses, and I'm like, like how are you? I can't even fathom like how that's gonna shape people being so rich, and not from like, I mean, obviously most of them like already have privilege to get to that position, but like not like it's not generational wealth. Like they themselves are millionaires, or like they themselves are rich. How in the world? Like we've never had that before in the history of humanity.
But so
Other
many
than
of those people say they don't have money, but they actually do. They're just lying. Like they're, that it is generational wealth, but it's just not known.
Oh, interesting.
but I still think a lot of them make, like, for example, I don't know if you guys know who, like, I think it's Kelly Stamps, but like she posted a video where she basically like broke down how much money she's made on YouTube and how much money she makes on YouTube. And she's only recently like blown up, and she has like, I don't know, maybe let's say like 300,000 subscribers or something like that, which is not a lot, right, in the YouTube realm. And it's a shit ton of money. Like it's an amount of money that like most people
will
like
never
within her age group will not be making.
Is that
and
the
like,
gamer?
No, she does like lifestyle stuff. She's like in New York.
Oh.
I just think of her because she gave like a full rundown of how much money she's making, and it was like like 30,000, like over 30,000 US dollars or something like that a month. Sorry, wait, I don't understand.
Wow.
Don't listen to me. I don't understand US dollars. Completely take that back. I have no idea. I don't remember, but you can find it on her channel. But like the amount of money that she's making is like, and she's not even a big channel. And then I think about someone like Best Dressed, right? Who like has like what 3 million followers, and she's like 22, 23. And I'm like, how in the world can you live with like, it's so insane to me to think that like there are people now that or like Emma Chamberlain, right? Who like, yeah, they definitely mostly come from like middle class backgrounds or upper middle class backgrounds. Like, I certainly
like Vicky Woe, or like those like weird like who like base their whole careers off of like Dr. Phil and like disrespecting their parents, and then like cultural appropriation and just like straight up like
that's hilarious.
Yeah, like, what? We really make people rich for like disrespecting like yeah, it's just wild.
But of course, this is what all the kids aspire to then, and then it like feeds the system because it's like they see the quickest path to success through commoditizing themselves.
Yeah.
Why would you invest in anything else?
But honestly, like, why would they go to university either?
Yeah, like why?
Like, no, really, what other way is there?
I even think about like what was her name, Alexis Ren, who like are just these people that like blew, like especially Instagram, because like at least like for the most part on YouTube, like you do have to have like, no, obviously everybody has a personality, but you have to provide some kind of like content. But like on Instagram, it doesn't really like, it doesn't imply in the same way. Like you can super sexy, and then you're rich, like you're fully like making a ton of money because you're hot, which isn't like a bad thing. Like monetize that shit for sure. But like it's wild that it, like I can't comprehend it. It's actually I just can't wrap my head around.
I feel like there's just a mental health aspect of like being an Instagrammer that isn't talked about enough, where like there's a type of depression that no one talks about. So there's the depression that people have when they don't get what they want, or they, you don't have the job you want, you don't have the life you want, so you're depressed. But then there's the type of depression you have when you get everything you want, but you're still not fulfilled. That's usually when people kill themselves. But like that's where I feel like a lot of famous people are.
This is why I love Russell Brand, because he was that exact person. He got everything. He was married to Katy Perry. He fulfilled the celebrity dream, and then he was still like completely, he was just like he realized and he, well, it's not that he became suicidal, because he was on the spiritual, well, was he on the spiritual path at that point, but he had given up addiction or heroin. But he turned himself around and was like, okay, this is not where the goodness, there's no goodness in this. And whenever I think, oh, I wish I was more successful, I do think of him and be like, oh, there's not satisfaction in that if you're pursuing it for the wrong reasons.
I think what's so awful is the fact that like we're kind of presented with like fame and influence and money on the other spectrum. It's like you're facing with two extremes, and the concept of just normalness and just existing is like
yeah, it's seen as a failure when like
Yeah.
normal is such a success. Like to be able to be normal and find joy in, if you can't find joy in just like the banality of your existence, then there's no joy for you anywhere. Like,
but I think that's
the
because the like
numbers. Oh.
I feel like that's because the like let's just say like middle class, or like the what we where you're like happy, like content, but like you're not crazy or whatever. That like hasn't really existed until recently. I mean, like in the past you would have like kings, queens, aristocracy, and then like poverty. Like there wasn't an in between. Like you were either rich or you were poor. Like there wasn't this space where you were like,
or this like ideal
It's almost like reverting to like that time period.
1950s, 60s, 70s in America, like you did have that. But the interesting thing is, so our parents experienced that, at least here, but then wages have stagnated and profits have gone up. So all of that extra money has gone to the top. And like, I just watched a video the other day on the statistics, like you can't make a minimum wage and have a house. You can't have a middle class life anymore. It's just not possible. So like they're telling us like, you guys are lazy, you guys are, stop spending on avocado toast.
I know.
Stop trying to be influencers, when actually those jobs don't exist anymore.
America is so interesting in this regard, personally, like in my opinion, but because it's like it's like, it's the like biggest economy in the world, like the most powerful country in the world, and yet like the poverty rate is so high.
When I was in Southeast Asia, it was really striking to me. I didn't expect, like I was in Cambodia, and Cambodia is like super, super, super poor. There's a lot of really poor people, a lot of illiterate people, very little services. But you'd see Hummers, like Rolls Royces, mansion. And I was like, what the fuck? And I couldn't, it took a long time. And then I was like, America is exactly like this. Like, not exactly like this, but as in like, it's the same. It's the extreme like disparity in wealth is striking. And it's, I think it was it Bobo, you said it was like, people think that they're like aspiring billionaires or millionaires. It's like, no, you're not. You're like, you're just the little guy. But I think it's because so many people, especially white people, identify with the billionaire. Like so many trash white guys are like, working their job, and they think that they can be Jeff Bezos because they've been sold this dream. And it's so untrue. So it keeps them from identifying with, I think it was Sonia Renee Taylor actually, identifying with the working class, or black and brown people, as like the as the people who are being exploited. And it's a huge, it's the trick, the devil's trick, isn't it?
Like it's always the most exploited people who are like employees of white supremacy. Like it's always like Trump supporters, like who live in trailers, who are the most they're the ones who promote white supremacy the most, even though they don't even benefit from it. And but you are an employee.
They have such big egos where they think like to this day, oh my god, we're the greatest country in the world, like, and they like fully, with their like full brain, they really think that. Whereas I come from a really like the government's super, what's the word, like they're corrupt, and everybody, the rich, the poor, no matter what race, they know that the government's corrupt, they know the government's trash, and we all hate it. Like, yeah, sure, some people won't do anything about it, but at least we all can acknowledge that, no matter what, we can all like agree on that. Whereas Americans, like, fully, they're like, no, this is the greatest nation on planet, blah blah blah. I'm like, are you for real? Like,
I know.
Are you good?
I think patriotism is unethical.
I feel like Trump and his supporters are just one big cult.
Yeah.
100%.
It's fear-based.
But I feel like everywhere is almost a cult. Like in some ways, like isn't like the like, I don't know. Never mind.
I agree with you. Like I think so, especially in Europe, we look at America and we're like, oh, I can't believe they're so like this. Aren't they so terrible? Meanwhile, like, hello, this is the birthplace of all this shit, you know?
Yeah.
It's this externalization, it's like projection onto America, and like they do behave in this dramatic, like terrible way that is so easy to point the finger, but and like stops Europe from looking inward. Like no one in France is that pressed. You know what I mean? They're not like, they're really, really behind. They don't care. They don't even recycle. You know, well, no, they do recycle some, but like they're just so, you know, because they're outside the English-speaking world. There's so much. There's so little progress made in these issues, and people love looking at America and going, "Oh well, it's them. You know, it's not us."
Well, that's the thing that's fascinating about America as well, or American culture, I should say, because like it's both like absolutely insane and also like the like progressiveness, or you know, like I often think about um like I would always give the example like, sorry, brain fart, of like gay marriage or like same-sex marriage, and how like in the US there was such an uproar that it wasn't like nationwide or whatever, like as in with like, all the states. And it really like I from the outside, this is like the perception, obviously not, I don't know from the inside, but from the outside
it's because the US has stopped progress in the rest of the world, other countries back into the Middle Ages. You know, like America's also responsible for the subjugation of South Africa, Afghanistan, Iraq. Like, let's not even talk about that. Iran, like all the stuff that happened there, Syria. It's just kept, like, Yemen is just in dire straits right now. And I mean, hello, Africa, the entire continent is just you know, kept under the thumb of colonialism. So like they get, I suppose America gets to dance and say like, oh look at all the ways we're progressive, but at the same time stopping and pointing at other people and saying how backwards they are. So whilst we're pointing at them, they're pointing at someone else. So it's this endless game of blame somebody else, when really we should all be looking, you know, at ourselves and trying to come up with thing. But that's male culture, I find. Like, sorry men, I don't mean all men, but you know, it's this like what I think what a coronavirus has shown me is that male dominator culture, patriarchy, is unable to take accountability, is unable to say, yeah, that was me. Like, can you just say it was me and say sorry, and then we can move on? But no.
But even to me, like that whole idea to me stems from like, because if I think about like even the internet space, right, and like what dominates like mainstream internet thoughts, like for me it feels American. Like I feel like the mainstream internet is pushed by is a base majority within, as a consumer who's not American and has no association to the US, like through the internet, that's like really what I'm like exposed to. Like the majority of influencers are like, even if we just like English speaking influencers are like American, but even people who don't speak English very well like watch and consume American like culture and American like influencer culture, or influencers that are American or live in the US. Like it's so based within that idea that even these like things that we talk about, like all of this stuff like emotional labor, like what you were just saying about like taking accountability, all of those thought processes to me like stem from the US, or at least stem from American culture, because that entire discourse is like mainly based within the US and then extended to like Australia and the UK.
Wow.
Yeah, Australia literally copies everything America does, and it mostly has a bad effect. like everything. Like why are 21st the thing to be celebrated here? Why is Sweet 16th the thing here? There's literally no purpose. It's just because they have meaning in America. So many things, especially now with all the shit that's going on.
I
It's
also feel
cultural
like
imperialism at like it's the height of cultural imperialism. Like America's greatest export is its culture. Like that's what it is.
But I also feel like America's like the biggest population in the world that is actually global, because you think of Russia and China, and they have a lot of people as well, but they're not as global as America is. So I feel like they're the country with the most people that's the most global. So they have like they affect much more because there's much more people to affect others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're like highly transparent too, whereas China and Russia tend to not be as transparent in like the free media, although, you know, who knows with the media right now in the US, but it's like becoming very polarized. But I think if you can appeal to all Americans, like that's like the influencer, like if you appeal to the majority of Americans and you're American, like that's a huge market. You've already conquered that. So then your size is so big. How could you not then appear, especially on a US generated app too?
Sorry, go on.
When you're talking about how everything is copied in Australia and the UK and even Canada to a huge extent, I always think that like the legal system of the UK is the horcrux of imperialism, because it's like these ideals are like adopted, and then it's like even in Ireland we adopted this legal system, and it has the same it produces the same kind of results, you know. The judicial system has a lot to answer for as to what is important in a society, and I think that any of the colonies who kept any of the imperialist judicial system are still beholden to ideals and stuff like that that are not, that don't go along with their culture. And like American, you know, the American culture, popular culture is another horcrux that, like, you know, will get into the soul of every living human being. So as long as that's alive, the American dream is alive in a way, or the American empire is I know.
Were you going to say something, Barbara, before?
I was going to ask if you guys think this is the beginning of the fall of the American empire.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I
think social media is the beginning of the fall.
Ooh.
Yeah. True, actually.
So what if that be precipitating the fall of American society?
What's it?
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, I was saying, what are some of the things that seem to be like precipitating the fall of American culture?
The fact that there's like basically a civil war.
Yeah.
That right now this media is not really showing, but what, like in the beginning, especially of like the whole Black Lives Matter thing, like that was definitely like, how is that any different from a civil war?
Yeah.
Well, we've had civil wars and still like survived, but do you think that this particular type of civil war is something that is going to potentially lead to, you know, destruction?
I think before with civil wars there was like no real alternative. It's like, oh, let's fight so that we can rebuild something here on this land. But now with social media, it's like we don't have to actually replace what's happening in America. Like social media itself can be the new empire. So like you don't have to rebuild the government. You don't have to change what's happening like on land physically. So I think like that in itself is like the conditioning factor that could mean that this civil war actually makes a difference, and that difference will be that social media is going to be the new empire.
Wow.
Yeah, I think some of the unrest like within right now, it might also just be like our generation and we haven't seen something similar to it. Like I think the protests against Vietnam, like I think there have been many other in the civil rights movement, like we just haven't experienced it, and we have this hyper focus through social media, this ability to see it all. But I think our problem is we're not producing enough of value anymore. Like we're just like putting out a lot of good stuff.
I keep thinking recently, I've been thinking a lot about how new everything is, and it keeps shocking me. Like every time I think about it, I'm like, oh my god, because like I never think about how new it just, everything is so new. Like it's barely existed. Like Italy was only unified in like this around the same time as Australia in like the 1870s. Like it's barely existed. Like Italian as a language wasn't even widespread until max the 60s. Like when Italy was unified, like 2% of Italy spoke what we now see as Italian.
Really?
Even in Thailand, yeah. Even in Thailand, like Thailand only became the country Thailand in the like 1900s when like this guy overthrew. Anyways, it just I keep thinking Australia, right, is such a new country. America, such a new country. But like all of these countries, like and all of like, because I hold culture like super super near and dear to my like entire existence. But I've been thinking about like how irrelevant it is. Like even in Hong Kong, right? Like there's no ethnic difference between like Hong Kongers and like mainland Chinese people. They're all Chinese, and most people that now identify as Hong Kongers, like their families mainly came over to Hong Kong during the during like the 60s.
Isn't that the same with Singapore?
No.
Oh, okay.
They're quite different. Because Singapore also has independence, whereas Hong Kong doesn't. And it was colonized in a different way. Also, Singapore is an island, whereas like Hong Kong is attached to, like Hong Kong, yes, is an island, but like Hong Kong Island is an island, but Hong Kong overall is attached to mainland China. But yeah, like I'm thinking about how new everything is, and then I'm like, you know what? We're all stupid. Like we're all just so dumb because we all think that like it matters so much. And then I'm like, we haven't even existed. Like I'm like holding near and dear to me that I'm Italian, but like it's so irrelevant. Like what even is that? My grandma's illiterate. Like her family wouldn't have even spoken Italian until like, you know, like 70 years ago. Like there are people alive today who existed in times where like I can't even fathom what the world looked like. So like it changes so quickly that like, does anything we say or hold or think even hold any merit?
This is a view of from a very American or Australian view though, because you're the newness of Australia as it is now, rather than like the ancientness of it when it comes to Aborigines. Like with Ireland, we discovered things 5, 10, 15, 20,000 years old, well, maybe not 20, on a regular basis. So there's a huge history there that goes back way further than like Australia, which is really, really new. And I think Australia and America kind of suffer from an identity crisis in that way, from the roots of, you know, those countries being, they're still trying to grapple with it. You know, like white Americans are so obsessed with being Polish American and Irish American and Swedish American or whatever, that there's no they're still trying to work it out as to what American actually means. And in a way, I think Australia are probably going through that. And I don't envy that struggle, because like as an Irish person, I have a very clear heritage, you know, going back even on the land that my parents own, like probably 150 years, you know. So I think that's, I don't know, does anyone struggle with their identity in that way, like heritagely in the
I feel like with Australia, we as a country label ourselves as being like the multicultural country as a way of avoiding the fact that our country originated from Aboriginals. And we just label like, yeah, we're multicultural. We love the Europeans. We love the Asians. We love the this, that, and that. But it's because it's just a way of seeming like we're inclusive, but really we're just avoiding what this country actually was originally. And I like recently in the recent years, like at events and stuff, people that are hosting will be like, we recognize the original custodians of this land, and give a 10-second paragraph that's repeated everywhere and think that's enough, when it's not. And we're not even multicultural at all. We're not at all.
Australia is the widest country.
Yeah.
I noticed that when I visited, I was like, when at the beginning of the dinner where they read that, and it was just like, but the culture itself felt like in some ways, at least the people I was with, like the frat boy white culture of America, just like created on its own somewhere else, and I was like, what is going on here? This is
I
just
remember
like,
when
bizarre.
I visited like I went to Toowoomba. I don't know, you guys are Australian, some of you, they probably know that. But, and then I went to, and there was like literally 0 minorities. And then I went to Sydney, and literally the only 2 Black people that I saw were Jackie Aina and her husband, or her boyfriend. And I'm like a huge fan, and I was like doing her dance. And it was just like literally like, I've never seen something like that in my life. And it's like either that or it's like Lebs, which we call like the white people of the Middle East. Like they kind of blend in, so it's like really interesting.
This is fascinating. I'm keen to see your thoughts on this, your guys' thoughts on this, because I like stumbled across I don't know if you know I don't know her handle. I think it's Christine something. She runs the Slow Factory, but she's Lebanese. And she posted this thing, and I can't even remember it was a post that somebody else had posted, but I ended up going into this deep rabbit hole about, because it was basically saying, so it said, it uses the word Swana, so Southwest Asians and North Africa. And it basically said like, don't refer to Swana people as like Caucasian, or like we're not white. And it was this really interesting, so I read like, I literally went down the biggest rabbit hole, because I never considered, so I don't know if you know where the term like Caucasian comes from, but it's actually not officially, like the UN has like said that it's not a classifier of race anymore, because it was never, so they basically said that it's not, because it actually is not, has no scientific basis.
It's like a race science thing, right?
Yeah, this guy went to the like Caucasus Mountains and was like, these people are wonderful, this is where Jesus came from, so we
wow. Imagine thinking Jesus is white.
What? So no, this is actually, so I really, really recommend people like Google it, because I never knew this. So, because I never, in Hong Kong, like the term Caucasian isn't written in like any, like that's not a thing that you take. And apparently through this thing that I've seen, that's only in the US is it still used as a like ethnic or like racial classifier, that like on census and things like that the term Caucasian is still used, because globally it's basically been like, that's not a term, like it doesn't refer to anyone, it has no scientific basis, it's not a thing. And so the comments in this thing were so interesting, because all of these people were talking about like Armenia, Georgia, like Kazakhstan and all these places, and being like, yes, like we like look like the same as like maybe a French person or an Italian person does, but like when you call us white, you're erasing our identity. Also, a lot of this was from the perspective of like an American, like Armenian, or an American, like someone that's like doesn't live in that country. But it's super interesting, like because I never thought about, I just, I don't know, because I can't speak to those people, but there were a lot of arguments in the comments from the same side, being like, yes, we are white, no, we're not white. And a lot of them were speaking about like how like if you go into Armenia, like a lot of people will be like, yes, we're white, because they want to be associated with like Western Europe, so like France, Italy, Spain. And then they were also talking, so like in those countries are not considered they're considered both part of Asia and the EU. So like they're not in the European Union, but they're like in this thing called like, it's like nations that are like part of Europe but not in the European Union. They're like this outer circle, and so they're not fully in Europe, and in Asia they're not fully accepted as like Asians, and then elsewhere anyways, it's I can't
so
look at it. It's super interesting.
The drama.
I know. Yeah, I think we might have to start wrapping up, but this has been really lovely. Maybe our next Zoom should be about race, culture, and identity. And like, yeah, now I'm like thinking, like, aren't all of our market identity just kind of imaginary?
Yeah, I want to talk about slurs.
You want to talk about
slurs?
Oh, yeah, we'll get into that in our next thing. But thank you guys all for joining. This
I
is
just
really
want to
good.
acknowledge that there was another guy that we did not like even acknowledge. I think his name was Tristan or
Tristan.
Tristan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
Gavin, you're not special anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't even, he was just quietly listening. He had like his earphones in, his hood up, and he was just like, I was like, oh, look, this guy, who are you? Okay,
Oh my god.
Please
Next
start
time I'll
Discord
force
and we can like call him out and be like, talk.
Did
I
anyone
know.
who didn't get a chance to talk have anything that they wanted to add? Well, there's more like
Yeah.
space at the end here. No pressure.
I want to know how many people are in Discord. Like, is everyone
Me?
from Discord?
Everyone joined the Discord immediately.
I'm Eat the Rich,
Oh,
by
okay.
the way.
Oh, are you
okay.
Easter egg? Oh my god.
Wait, what? What happened?
I'm Eat the Rich.
oh, hey.
I'm Savage.
The bars
Oh my god, it's so nice to put faces to names.
I feel like I already figured it out for like the personalities match.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Wait, who's talking?
Christina.
We all know who Christine is.
I'm from you.
I don't see all of them.
Wait, Ruth,
So
what's your name in the Discord?
Well, I just joined like literally like this week, but I'm Exotic Aries on Discord and also on Instagram. So I'm literally gonna go and comment.
Captain K or something
Captain
like that.
KP?
Something.
Yeah.
Are they not here?
I don't think so.
KP.
Yeah. Cool.
Amanda, are you in the Discord? I joined, but I actually haven't had the time. Like, there's so many notifications, and I'm like, oh, I need to catch up on that. And then, like, 100 notifications later, I'm like, be selfish like me, and I just pop in when I'm like, oh, I want to talk about myself now. I wish you can pay attention to me. Yeah, it's like so cool because of all the different time zones. It's like I wake up with like so many notifications because like it's been popping off in like the other side of the world. So
That's why I just send memes. That's why I just send memes because like I'm still on it, but it's like an easy picture, and then I'm like, bye.
I believe that there's like 120 people on it or whatever, but then there's only like 40 of us that are like always there.
I know, I'm sure it's like
Keep like spilling the tea on like all the details of my personal life too, and remembering that there's actually a lot more than just like the 5 main people that I think are hearing it.
Don't tell
Like,
me that.
maybe
I just hope they don't read it. That's all.
It's one of those
They'll
funny
secretly
things
like join.
you share like super personal things, but you're like, oh, whatever. Like it doesn't even.
Yeah, like who's gonna, no one is a cop. Like no one's gonna tell on you.
Well, I was anonymous, and I'm like, shit. Now they know my face. I should probably start acting right.
We're terrible spies. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I didn't even realize that was like I didn't think about it. I didn't like contemplate, oh, I could like come up with an alias. But I probably should have, but you know.
It's too late now.
Yeah.
I know. Well, thank you guys for joining. This has been so lovely. Let's do this again.
Thanks for having us.
We'll do this again. And I'll catch you next time.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.